It was a night in December. I was in London at my work's Christmas party, and every single person around me was happy and winning awards, and I couldn't even talk. That was the situation that actually started my journey of seeking a diagnosis. I had never experienced anything quite like that, where I just shut down. That is the easiest way to describe it. I've gone through different parts of life, and I've been able to speak in front of hundreds of people. I've spoken at conferences, and I've always been anxious, but I've never shut down. And for some reason I did. And it was only my second time in that office. I had a remote work from home job. We had to go in once a month. November had been fine. This was December. And I just shut down. It was an awards party for my team, and they were doing some serious awards, but mostly fun awards. And all of the team, I think bar myself, drank. I don't drink. I haven't drunk for quite a while. And it was quite loud and rowdy. And everyone seemed to be having a really good time, apart from me. I can be really outgoing. I can also be quite introverted, and I just shut down. Whether it was the noise of people, whether it was the bright lights that they had like twinkling, whether it was just the atmosphere, being around loud drunk people, the banging on the tables when they were announcing the winners of the awards. I don't know what it was, but something happened to me there, and I just shut down. And when I came home, so luckily I managed to somehow, at the end of the night, because we weren't allowed to leave early, I had to be at this party, I was able to get myself back to the hotel. I phoned my partner as soon as I left, and we spoke to her, and I walked the 5 minutes around the corner, and I was safe. But that experience when I came home, I needed to understand why that had happened. I had never felt like that before, where I don't know whether I was disassociating. I just couldn't deal. I couldn't deal. And the way my body responded to that was to not be able to speak, not be able to move, just survive. It was awful. And it was that got me researching different things and led me to want to pursue an autism diagnosis. The more I read about autism, the more I realised that I thought that I was. Everything that I read made sense for someone who has autism or someone with autistic traits. My life, I've always been an outcast. I've never really fit in. I've never felt like I fit in. And to be honest, the more I read, the more I realised that the more I realised why I didn't fit in. It's because my brain is different. So I'm a big believer of self-diagnosis. I think if you have autistic traits and you research autism and everything seems to suggest that you're probably autistic, I believe you. Really, I believe you. Because it's a privilege to be able to get a diagnosis of autism. And the reason I say that is when I went to my GP with my new knowledge, which was massive, because if you know many autistic people, we like to deep dive into information. So autism became my fixation, my hyper focus for weeks and weeks. And I feel like I absorbed as much information about autism as I could prior to my doctor's appointment. Went in to the doctors, explained what had happened, asked to have a referral or something, like what was there available for me that I could have or that I could be put forward for. Now, the reason I talk about an autism diagnosis being a privilege is because at that time there was nowhere for me to be referred. The NHS in my area had no referral place. Literally, I was told, we can't assess you for autism because there is nowhere to send you. So I'm sat in the doctor's surgery and I'm saying all of the ways now that I believe that my autism has affected my life, and the doctor just can't do anything. Like nothing. They said that there's nothing. That was the answer. That was what I came away with, or was going to come away with. They seemed to believe me, and it wasn't a case of they just didn't want to refer me. I think there genuinely at that time wasn't anywhere. And this was during COVID times, kind of. November 22 is when I got the diagnosis. So it would have been about sometime in 2020, I think. Or I'm not sure. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. It was sometime between 2020 and 2022, because actually getting to the autism diagnosis took about a year and a half. When I was in the doctor's surgery having a chat with them about the potential for my diagnosis, they said, take this questionnaire, fill it out, take this one as well. This is about ADHD, and bring them back in and we'll see what we can do. So I had this autism questionnaire, this ADHD questionnaire, and I was sent away. I hadn't researched ADHD at all. It wasn't something that I had considered. When I was researching the autism, I did see things about ADHD, but in my mind, I had no ADHD symptoms. Turns out, I just didn't know how ADHD could present in a woman, in an adult woman at that. So I'm sat at home and my wife is helping me do the questionnaires, and the autism one, everything made sense, like tick, tick, whatever, no surprises there. Filled out the ADHD one and we're looking at the answers to the questions, and it's just like, oh my God, I think I've got ADHD. And that was a difficult one because my mind of ADHD, honestly, is at school, and I hated school. It was not a happy place for me. But my understanding of someone with ADHD was boys that couldn't pay attention and and boys who were troublemakers. That was it. The ones that would try and be funny and irritating. That was what I thought ADHD was. Went back to the doctor, looked at the forms, nowhere to send the autism assessment, but he could send the ADHD referral through with Right to Choose, which is an NHS service where you have the right to choose your provider for your referral, I think, something like that. Anyway, so I went through that and I got my ADHD diagnosis about a year later. So, yeah. It's hard talking about a diagnosis in detail. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm ready. So it took about a year to get the ADHD diagnosis. And during that time, I tried to tell myself, well, I don't need my autism diagnosis. I know that I'm autistic. I'm trusting that. But at least I can do the ADHD one. What happened is, as time went on, I then realized that in order to have protection at work and to feel just more comfortable in the workplace, actually, I needed a diagnosis. There was still nowhere for me to be referred to. So at that point, me and my partner, we looked at going privately. And I was lucky in a sense that we were able to pay for my autism diagnosis. I used a company in, not Cheshire, like Liverpool way, I think, called Axia, and they were great. I still had to wait months. It took about a year and a half, I think. And it was quite a lot of money, but it was fascinating because I had to fill out extra questionnaires and I had to provide detailed reports from my childhood. I had to ask my mum for information about me as a child because I don't really remember my childhood. It's like this black hole that sits here, and I don't know why. Probably because I was autistic in a world that wasn't designed for me and my autism or my neurodivergence or my ADHD or AUDHD. Fundamentally, the world was not designed for my brain. And so I had to survive somehow all these difficult, stressful situations. And I think my mind did that just by shutting it out. And, I can't remember it. Anyway, I got my diagnosis. And at first, you feel like it's great. It's very validating for all of your struggles that you've had through your life. And if you are a late diagnosed female, I mean, anybody with autism, late diagnosed, and it's not just women, but men as well, it's hard. Everything starts to make sense. All of those horrible situations you were in, all of the times you were bullied as a child, all of the times you were called the weird one, or you weren't invited to the party, you weren't included in the playground, all of those things start to make sense. But what no one tells you, and in my experience, is this sense of loss and grief. It was like, finally, I knew who I was and I could make sense of my life. But I had this just overarching I had this overarching sense of grief for this version of me who could have been if I had been diagnosed as a child. And I know it's all hypothetical because back 10, 20, 30 years ago, I mean, I wasn't diagnosed, but also the understanding of what neurodivergence is was very different now. But it doesn't stop you just mourning that version of you that could have been, that never was, and never can be. And that is something that's really hard to navigate because it's a feeling I'd never felt before. And it's a feeling that I couldn't understand right away. I should feel happy because I've got this diagnosis. It validates all of my feelings and all of these hardships that I've had, and the fact I've been diagnosed with depression for 20 years and on medication for that, and the fact that I used to self-harm as a child. But it doesn't make everything okay. It's not like a magic fix that says, you're autistic, now life's going to be great and you know who you are. It's not that. The reality is that you can get protection at work, you have a formal diagnosis, no one can take that away from you. There's no medication for autism. You can't just be better. And you realise all the things that could have been and weren't and can't be and won't be. And I think that is why I'm trying so hard to speak about my experience and what it's like. I'm in a few groups and I see people post comments about feelings of grief and things, and it's just something that you can't be prepared for. I know it sounds odd, but I want to talk about these things because I think that every aspect of late diagnosis is important, and there's so much out there at the moment about how great it is, and I'm not saying it isn't, but sometimes we need to talk about the negative side of a diagnosis. And don't get me wrong, I would not change my diagnosis. I would rather know, because hands down I'm able to live my life in a way now that helps me reduce that risk of burnout. And in fact, I don't think I've shut down like I did that day. I haven't had sensory overwhelm because I can manage myself in a way that prevents me getting to that point of no return. I can talk about sensory overwhelm till, I don't know, a saying of some sort, like till the cows come home or something, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But Where was I? I completely lost my train of thought. So being diagnosed, I wouldn't go back in time and not do it. But what I would say is, if you're going to pursue a diagnosis, be mindful that when you get it, and I'm assuming here you get it because you're autistic, it's 100% validating, but I imagine you too will go through this kind of dip or period where you grieve for someone who just could have been. And that's weird, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and it's hard to explain to people who don't have a late diagnosis. Oh, yeah, it's a tough one. However, my diagnosis did validate, and it has helped me learn coping strategies. It has given me protection in work, and I would 100% recommend, if you have these services available to you, or the funding available somehow, or you have some savings, pursuing a diagnosis is 100% worthwhile. But I think you just need to be prepared that it's not always a great thing. I think it can also change your mindset quite a lot. There are things previously that I would have done without any hesitation and said yes to. And now I'm learning what I actually really want to do, which is great. But then sometimes I worry that my trying to think about what I really want to do might hinder me actually doing some things that I do want to do, because I'm thinking I don't want to do them because I want to safeguard myself, when really I do want to do them, but it's the autism that says, oh no, you can't do it, when actually you can. And part of that diagnosis is going to be you needing to relearn how to do things that are scary and out of your comfort zone. All I would say on that though is that if your comfort zone is here, it can only grow by you stretching it. And you have to put yourself in situations that just flex it a little bit here and there. And over time, it is going to get bigger. But you do have to put yourself in those situations. And that is what I tell myself all the time. If something gets a bit intense, or I start kind of feeling imposter syndrome-y, or like I can't do it, I tell myself that it's my comfort zone. It's a bit small at the moment, so let's flex it and let's grow it. I could talk about this stuff all day, but I'm going to leave it there for this one. Please follow me and subscribe for more autism, ADHD related content. I'm not going to sugarcoat life with a diagnosis or as a late diagnosed autistic woman, but you will get honest, truthful content from me. I'm also focused on mental health and well-being and physical fitness, because I think that also feeds into mental health. And I'm a huge advocate for speaking about mental health, neurodivergence, and everything in between. So please give me a follow and let me know below where you are in your diagnosis journey. Have you just started? Are you in your deep dive special interest phase where you're absorbing all of the information, or have you just been diagnosed? Because they're really important things that I'd like to know, and I would love to be a part of your journey and help support you, because having a community of people is really important when you're going through big life changes or events. Thanks for staying with me all this time, and yeah, let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much. Bye.